Good morning and welcome on quite a grey but never dreary sunrise safari. My name is Brent. I'm going to be your guide for the safari. I have Andrew, also known as the Aardvark, on camera with me. We have James and Brian on the other vehicle, and we have young Jessica and Tara in final control. So welcome. Let you know what we're doing at the moment. We're heading in a big circle around the last area where those lions were last night to see if they have moved. Unfortunately, no tracks yet, which is quite a positive thing because that means they're still quite close by. James is busy checking the southern side. We're checking the western side. I've already checked the north, so looking positive for those lions so far. If we have no luck with those lions, I'm going to go look for that mystery leopard around the Gowrie Dam or Juma Dam. So, welcome. If any of you guys are new, we are live. So it is quite a grey and windy morning, but there is no chance it's going to be dreary. James and I will make sure of that. And apart from being live, we're also interactive, so you can ask us questions about what we're seeing, and you can do that by emailing us on questions@wildearth.tv, or you can use the hashtag Safari Live on Twitter. So sometimes these grey mornings can be quite difficult. It's difficult to see the tracks, but we have been going really slowly to make sure we don't miss any of the tracks. And so we don't miss any of the tracks, and I'm sure James is doing the same on Philemon's cut line. So we're going to get going now. Apparently those lions were heading towards a large group of buffalo bulls last night, so hopefully for them, they were looking a bit hungry. They might have managed to catch a snack. So let's get going, see if we can find some tracks, or even better, find those lions. So there's obviously a big cold front coming off the coast, and we left in almost perfect weather yesterday evening on the Sunset Safari at Fireside Chat. It was warm, none of us were wearing jerseys, we're all in shorts, and overnight this huge cloud bank has rolled in. Fortunately it looks quite high, so it doesn't look like there's too much moisture. And how's that? Bang on the lion tracks. Unfortunately in this really low light it's going to be very difficult for you to see, but there are lion tracks here on Impala Road heading towards Impala Plains. So bear with me for a second while I update the other vehicles who are looking for these lions. Now the Game Drive radio is a really important tool that we all use, and it enables us to communicate with the other vehicles. It enables us to cut down the time it takes to find animals by more of us utilizing an area and not checking the same place twice. Stations in Konzo of the Zangala are now heading south on Impala Road towards Impala Plains. So I'm going to have to concentrate a little bit more than if there was a lot of light around, because the tracks are more difficult to see. I might actually just put my lights on for a little bit to try to throw a bit of a shadow so I can see the tracks. It does look like they have possibly left the road. All I'm seeing is a hippopotamus at the moment who's been wandering around here looking for food. It does look like they have left the road somewhere around there, but what we're going to do is we're going to keep checking on this road. They might pop back up, and if not, we'll loop around the block again to see if they've come out in a westerly direction. So it is quite warm this morning compared to normal. It's about 14 degrees, it's 63 Fahrenheit. I feel the temperature is probably going to drop as the morning goes on, and as some of you might know, Andrew and I have a little competition every time in the morning and about what the temperature is before we are informed of it. And so far I'm up again. We were sitting at 1-all, and I guessed it correct this morning. Andrew thought it was a bit chillier. I think possibly because he's got such a large beard at the moment, it's insulating his face and he can't pick up on the temperature correctly. just going to chat to Ephraim, let him know the tracks have left the road. Oh, he might be talking to his guests. So James's plan has been to head across to Arethusa this morning. So I'm going to try to get hold of him quickly and let him know that it looks like these tracks are possibly going to cross into Arethusa. James. James tracks of these animals have crossed west over Impala Road towards Triple N Break. There's a strong possibility they're going to cross into Arethusa somewhere around the power lines. Probably about 300 meters to the north of that junction. I'm heading up that way now. I'll keep you informed. There we go. James is now already about to cross into Arethusa. He's going to head north on Parallel Road, which is exactly parallel to where we are. So this is one of the main access roads, so we will bypass non-game drive vehicles, so sort of delivery trucks, guests driving in, as well as sort of management buckies, as we call them. What we call a bucky, I think you guys would call, I think in Australia they call them a ute, which I think is a completely vile word. And in the States, you probably call them an SUV. This is a bucky here. Bucky is an Afrikaans word for like something that can hold things. So a pickup, I think, is the correct word you use in the northern hemisphere, or especially in North America and Canada. So it has a bucky, a loading bay that you can put things in. So here we go. What have we got crossing here? That is that hippopotamus who is walking down the road as well. So unfortunately, in this very low light, it's going to be near impossible to show for me to show you tracks. Hopefully it will get a little bit lighter and the sun might break through, and that'll make it easier to show tracks. Unfortunately, they're not really going to come out in this very low light. So Andrew, I'll look for tracks, you look for lines.
Copy that, sir.
So if you are new, you'll notice quite often my head is hanging off the side of the vehicle, especially in this low light. It's going to be even more, as I try to make sure we don't miss any tracks of these lines we're following. So those tracks were directly opposite me here when we last left them on the road. So we're going to check very carefully through this section. So while we go very, very slowly through the section and check for tracks, we're going to cross across to Commander Bond, who can bid you a good morrow and see what he's been up to.
Hello everybody and welcome to Wendy, this fine, cloudy, blustery morning. And Brian and I, Brian's on camera by the way, hello Brian.
Hello.
Yeah, dressed in camouflage rough so that the flies can't see him, let alone touch his skin. My name is James Hendry and we were just saying to each other how despite the fact that this is not the sort of quintessential African dawn with a blinding rising sun, there's something very lovely about it. A sort of peace and a air of expectation, which is just wonderful to drive through. So, what we have done this morning is to pop across to Arathusa, and we're heading north up a road called Parallel Road, very innovative name that, because it is parallel with the Triple M break, which is the eastern boundary of Arathusa. And we're heading up here. There were some lion tracks and reports of lions around this area this morning. One male, one female have headed towards Arathusa Safari Lodge over there. And the rest of the pride that Brent is following could be coming around this area. So we're just going to have a quick check through here and see if they have popped across. If they haven't, I'm sure there'll be other wonderful things to find here. Maybe small, maybe large, maybe with claws, maybe with horns, maybe with just a little bit of greenery around the leaves. Please remember, we do love to hear from you. Hashtag Safari Live, questions at wildearth.tv. As and when you would like to talk to us, please feel free at any stage. I'm just going to have a listen here. Right, let us carry on. Lovely sound, well, very subtle sounds around at the moment. Nothing in the way of birds shouting except the odd francolin and a very gentle rustling of this funny wind through the leaves. Well, what leaves remain. So we find ourselves on Arathusa where there seems to be quite a lot of game drive noise on the radio. So if my brain suddenly looks like it's exploded within my skull, that is because of the chatter upon the game drive radio. Lots of people out this morning looking for the wonders of the African wilderness, mostly with guests. What I'm going to do is just stop here to get hold of Brent, because the two of us are sort of in a similar area, although on different properties, and we need to keep each other informed, otherwise we won't know what's going on. Brent, do you copy Brent? Okay, copy. They did have one male and one female around Safari Lodge this morning, heading towards Central. They're following up there. I will continue following towards Red Dam.
Down towards you.
No reason for you not to listen to Brent, of course. Copy, thank you for that, Brent. Good luck around Gowrie Dam. Right, so that resolved Brent. And we've had a question from Bob in Iowa, who says, at what age does someone become a sesquicentennial? sesquipedalian. Sesquipedalian. Bob, I don't know what a sesquipedalian is, but I see that you have sent through a definition, and it is somebody who uses long words. Clearly, I am not a sesquipedalian, because I don't know what a sesquipedalian is, or didn't until you told me, so thank you very much for that. You did completely stump me with sesquipedalian. Thank you very much. Sesquipedalian. Brian, remember that. Sesquipedalian. I'll have to say it 100 times. And if anybody else would like to try and stump me with animal-themed large words, please feel free to do so. I don't think it'll be very hard. I don't think I am much of a sesquipedalian. But please go ahead. Tara will send them through to me. With relish, I'm sure. Sesquipedalian. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Sesquipedalian. Right, so the update from Brent, you didn't hear, I played you a little bit of it, was that the lions have crossed across the Triple M break. They're heading towards this area. Now earlier today there was a male and a female that came across apparently about 4 o'clock towards Arathusa Safari Lodge, which is not far from here. But the rest of the pride and the other male, which was, they were all knocking about Juma yesterday, weren't with them. So we're going to go and follow up there and see if we can pick up something. Sesquipedalian. Right, this is a beautiful clearing, and we had lots of questions yesterday about wildebeest and why, and if we find them here, and should we find them here, and where are they, etc. And this clearing here is where we do often find wildebeest, and it's because it's open and they like this. But this is an artificial clearing, so it's man-made, and you can see the rest of the bush around here is woodland. You can see the fringes of the clearing very easily, and those woodland areas are not the best wildebeest habitat, and so that's basically why we don't see a huge number of wildebeest. Sesquipedalian, Brian. Thank you very much to Kachino John for limiting the sesquipedalian challenge and saying that all words that are sent through to stump me should be 6 letters or less. Thank you, Kachino John, for that. Should perhaps help me a little bit, I hope. Sesquipedalian. I'll be saying that throughout the day. Sesquipedalian. So this is round about where Brent had the tracks coming across here. Just to the east of us there, probably about 100 meters. So we'll keep an eye on the road, a keen eye upon the road. Keen sesquipedalian eye upon the road. Alison Edward, thank you for your contributions to this little discussion on the sesquipedalians. Edward, you say you can't contribute because you can't spell. Edward, I can't spell either. That's why we have Microsoft Word. I'm really an appalling speller. And I suspect that were it not for the advent of the word processor, I wouldn't be an author at all. also have utterly appalling handwriting. Mercifully, I don't need it much anymore. No lion tracks yet. Now, an interesting question from Barbara in New York. I'll just stop here. You go back a little. Sorry, Brian. Barbara, your question is probably meant slightly tongue-in-cheek, but it's actually quite an important one. And just in front of us there on the road, there is a bump. And Barbara, you wanted to know if that is in fact a speed bump. It certainly acts as a speed bump, but it isn't a speed bump. You can see to the left of it is a drain. And those bumps are berms, or mitre drains. So the bump basically, when the waters flow, obviously not this time of year, roads are natural sites of erosion, and so you have to put drainage on them, because without that drainage the roads do become huge sites of soil loss. And so those bumps just help to stop the water, and then the mitre drains receive the water as it flows off the road, and then we pull the sand out of those drains during the sort of dry season, put them back on the roads, and so that just reduces water loss. Thank you, Barbara, but they are very sort of effective speed bumps, especially here on Arethusa. Whoever their Brian is nodding vigorously with whoever their land manager is, he's got a sort of unique bump design that is certainly it's not easy to get used to. It'd be very good for a BMX track. Up and down. Not very smooth. Very effective speed bumps. Sesquipedalian. Comment from Catherine, Texas, while we're looking for these lion tracks, that I should try and use the word sesquipedalian at least 5 times in a sentence, or in 5 sentences during the day. I will try. I'm not sure that it can be used in too many contexts in the wildlife arena. Not a lot of sesquipedalian leopards around here, but we'll see. I'm sure I'll be able to find 1 or 2 things to say. It is a very interesting atmosphere today. Very fresh smell, but the air definitely smells different when it's cloudy like this. Drive up here and we're going to stop and have a listen, because that's always very important while we're driving around, not to just blunder about the loud engine. And while we're doing it, I'll just answer a question from Jenna in Iowa. Jenna, you want to know what my favorite bird is. Not the crested francolin that you can hear there. I'm a big fan of the robin out here. We get a few, but the white-browed scrub robin to me is a very peaceful kind of sound, and I really love hearing their sound. That's what it does. Brian, what do you think it smells like?
Try and describe it.
It's very difficult to describe. So it's fresh, there's moisture in the air definitely. It's not quite as dusty as it is normally, perhaps because of the moisture. It feels a lot more dense.
It's crisper.
It's crisper. It's very lovely. And it's quite nice to have a gunmetal grey sky every so often. You know, we get these beautiful blue and sometimes in the winter blown out kind of white skies almost. And it's lovely to have this slightly eerie gunmetal sky with clouds scudding across this every so often.
Almost has an air of excitement.
It does have an air of excitement about it, absolutely. Alright, let us press on. Those Franklins down there are still alarm calling. I might just do a little loop around that way. It's just a bit early. Righty-ho. Still nothing coming across just yet. Not sure how many of you managed to see the fireside chat yesterday, but if you didn't, first of all, where were you? And second of all, we had a very interesting incident before we started. And I was just reminded of it as we drove past. We're driving past quite a lot of dead wood in which certain species of termite live. And there are a whole lot of termite ellies, which are the flying termites or breeding termites emerging. And it seems to me that it's very early in the year for them to be doing that. And I hope they're not just all going to fly out and be eaten, because normally they would come out during the rain. But perhaps the wood-dwelling termites, it doesn't really matter what time they come out, because they don't have to dig into the ground. It's always such a lovely kind of thing to see. This is the culmination of so much effort on behalf of the termite colony to just release their babies. The general idea behind those termites, of course, is that they're very similar to the ones in the mounds, but the big difference being that they don't grow fungus gardens. That's what the mound-building termites, Macrotermes natalensis, that's what they're known for. The fact that they grow huge fungus gardens to help them digest cellulose and lignin, whereas the other termites don't. But otherwise, it's pretty similar. They're not nearly as big, those colonies. The queen is much smaller. There's a robin calling. Somewhere here. There it is. Fine, I'll just roll. Sorry, I'll try and go back. He's in there. There he is. He's flown off. Nice little fellow. That's not what's calling. Sorry, he has gone, Brian. You can hear him calling. Very nice. Yeah, I do see him just flitting about in the understory behind us. But to try and track him with this camera is going to break Brian's back and make you seasick. That is the white-browed scrub robin. A very good way to make your lips move on a chilly morning. Lovely comment from Patty in Michigan. I'm not sure if I'm hearing correctly, but you say there is a word for that smell that comes out of the ground after the first rains. I did know there was a word. I didn't know what the word was. because I'm not a very good sesquipedalian. But I think you said it was called petrichor, is that correct? Petrichor. Brian is lifting his thumbs up. Brian's obviously a sesquipedalian. Thank you for that, Patty in Michigan. Petrichor is this beautiful earthy smell that comes out of the ground after the first rains. Brilliant, guys. We'll try and remember that. Molly in Iowa, while we are driving around looking for lions and listening to birds, two very nice questions from you about the birds. Do we get turacos here, Molly, and red bishop birds? We don't get red bishop birds here normally. They normally like to live on rivers in reed beds. They have a big sort of preference for reed beds. So not many red bishops in this area. But turacos we do get. Sometimes we get the purple crested turaco. And one of very closely related species, of course, is the grey go-away bird, which essentially is a turaco. It's just got a different name. And we're going to just pop up onto the top of onto this eastern boundary here, see if I can't find the tracks of those lions, and then we'll follow them in. This is around about where Brent saw them. Got them there? Yeah. All right, we've got the tracks here. We're gonna pop back across to Brent, see what he's doing, get some few updates from him, and we'll continue on these lion tracks, and with any luck, we'll see you later with some large, clawed, hairy, and teeth-riddled cats. See you just now.
Welcome back, everyone. We're busy freewheeling up towards the Gallagher waterhole, coming to look for this leopard that you guys spotted on the damn cam yesterday, and which managed to elude poor James and Jamie. I'm hoping my luck is a little better, and seeing if there's been any fresh tracks overnight. Lots of hyena tracks, but no leopard tracks just yet. So we're approaching the waterhole now. On a cold morning like this, it's unlikely that there's going to be anything there. Probably as it warms up through the day, the animals like zebra and nyala and buffalo will come down. As you can see, nothing here at the moment. So we're going to continue on. And fingers crossed for some tracks. So while we're looking for the elusive leopard, Mike is wondering if we've got any updates on Anderson Male and Mvula and their territorial dispute. Not yet, Mike. It seems to be very quiet. Mvula seems to have been spending a lot of time very far to the east of us, towards the Kruger National Park, and Anderson seems to have reached a sort of compromise for now with Tingana. But I personally haven't seen even big male tracks for a while, and I haven't seen a big male leopard in quite some time. So this is quite a big thoroughfare of animals, big game parts around here. So I'm just checking very carefully. So chatting to James last night, there's quite a bit of speculation on what that leopard was and who it possibly was. I know some people thought it might be Karula, but from what I heard from James, the tracks looked a bit big, possibly like a young male. So maybe one of the boys has come back for a visit. Q or K, for those of you not sure who those are, that's Quarantine and Kunuma, who are Karula's sons. Karula has been in the past the dominant female leopard in this area, although we're not seeing her as much as we used to, and her two sons have now reached maturity and have dispersed, but they do come back occasionally for a visit. Last one was Kunuma, who James found on a kudu kill in the drainage loan below the dam. So guys, I'm just going to go through a little dip here, so we might have a little bit of signal breakup. So I do apologize, but we'll be through it quite soon. Oh dear, we are starting to get quite a few drops of rain. Nothing too serious yet. I'm hoping because the cloud is so high, it's going to stay away. So you might see Andrew with a cloth on the lens every now and then as these little rain come from the heavens. So, someone who knows a lot about rain is Diana from the northwest of England, where I think the general norm is wet weather. Diana's wondering, when is it likely to rain? When is the first time it rains? Well, Diana, as we call it the dry season, almost every year people seem to be shocked that it rains at least twice during the dry season. So that is normal. We get a little bit of drizzle and stuff, not much that would affect the sort of bush and stuff. It would stay quite dry. Normally around the beginning of November would be our first big rains of the season. But you never know. And to quote Ernest Hemingway, there's two things one should never predict: the weather and a woman's moods. Andrew liked that one. Mr. Hemingway, who's one of my favorite authors, was quite a troubled soul, but the places he seemed to be at peace the most was when he was in Africa, and he did spend a lot of time out here. I don't know if any of you might have read the book The Green Hills of Africa. It's one of my favorites by Hemingway. Set in Kenya, quite close to the Tanzanian border. So we're coming up towards the Gowrie waterhole, the Juma Dam. So we're going to be checking very carefully to see if we can find any trucks around here. Fortunately, Andrew was on drive with James yesterday, so he knows exactly where that last set of trucks disappeared to. Sorry about that, folks. Andrew just making sure we're keeping the lens clean. Obviously, I've been very fortunate in my travels in Africa, and there's still a few animals in Africa I'd like to see. But Ashley from Alabama is wondering, what animal outside of Africa would I most like to see? And that's a really good question. And I've had quite a lot of long thinks about this, and I think you've got to put it into different perspectives. In the Americas, both North and South, and North would definitely be, for me, two animals in particular, oh, maybe three. See, this is where it gets difficult. I would love to actually see wolves. I'm a very big fan of the canid family in general. Grizzly bears. I was lucky enough to see a black bear on my last trip to the States. On the islands around, if we go further south, most definitely it gets a little easier for me. I would most definitely like to see a jaguar. That is definitely very high on my list. And then if we head off to the east, I would tigers, of course, tigers. And Andrew's been lucky enough to spend some time in Sri Lanka, and he's told me about a fascinating animal I didn't know much about called a sloth bear, which I think sounds like a very interesting thing. Andrew worked in Sri Lanka where there were a lot of leopards, and he saw lots of leopards and sloth bears. And what other creatures that side of the world, Andrew?
Asian elephants, a lot of different birds.
The Asian elephant, but if we start on birds, then I think we're never going to stop talking about what there is to see in the world. And there's so much to see, but definitely I think those 5 or 6 species highest up on the list, keystone species where they are. The track was over here. Okay, so I'm just going to have a quick look around here. Also great to be able to listen for a little bit, see if we pick up on any alarm calls. Bunch of great go-away birds alarm calling in the distance, just trying to figure out. More than likely it's a predatory bird, but it is definitely worth having a look. So on the other side of the waterhole I can hear them alarm calling. Meow, meow. I grab my binoculars and do a quick scan across the area there. And they seem to have gone quiet now, so I think more than likely it's possibly a slender mongoose or a bird of prey. Well, when James and I were out tracking the other morning, we actually saw something really fascinating. We were tracking what we think was possibly shadow, and as we were walking through the buck, we split up, and I was on the tracks following them, and James was sort of looping around checking if she might have ducked. It is quite difficult, especially where there's a lot of grass. And I saw what I thought was 2 squirrels leaping through the trees, and we heard a squirrel alarm calling, and James suddenly called to me and said, come here. And I rushed to him, and it was actually a slender mongoose chasing the squirrel through the tops of the trees. And then the squirrel managed to get to a small hole and disappear in it, and the mongoose gave up. But that's definitely the first time I've actually seen the sort of a slender mongoose right at the top of the tree. Normally we always see them on the ground, but obviously ferocious little hunters, and trying to catch one of those tree squirrels. Well, let's carry on. If the tracks were going in that general direction, we're going to loop around onto Gowrie Cutline and check if any tracks come out there. So Jamie also mentioned to me that she saw some giraffe staring down into the drainage line. So it's possible that maybe that leopard has done a little loop and gone down into the drainage line. So we are going to check this area extensively. Thanks very much to Kadria and Teresa, who are both very kindly inviting me to their part of the world, to, I think it sounds like Alaska, and to British Columbia in Canada. to come look at the species up there. I definitely have to come in the summer months though. I think my thermostat would take a severe beating if I had to come in the middle of winter. I had a friend who was a doctor, I have a friend who was a doctor in Canada at some point, and he said where they lived it used to get down to -30. He now lives in the low fells of South Africa, where -30 is a temperature I don't think it's reached even in the last ice age. There's something going on. A duiker just sprinted out of the bush here, as well as there's more grey lories alarm calling in the drainage line. I'm going to check the road up here quickly. If there is nothing, I think I'm going to pop down into the drainage line and possibly take a walk in a little bit. Remember, it's very important to check the junctions of roads. Lion and leopard really like to use them as sort of highways, and we must remember, there we go, what have we here? Now that's just to confuse us. Those are from yesterday. I think that's tracks of the Nkahuma Pride before they disappeared to the west of us, but that's not what we're looking for now. Those are old tracks. I'm pretty sure James would have mentioned to me this is almost a perfect leopard tree to the right of us here, and as far as I know, only Scott out of all of us has actually seen a leopard in this tree, and hopefully, not today it doesn't look like, but hopefully we will find a leopard in that beautiful big African ebony at some point. There's a nice branch for them to sleep on. I think as it gets warmer and we get into the summer months, there's a strong possibility that we might find a leopard resting in that tree. Just having a look at you see that dark patch in the tree there? Looked like there might be possibly a little bit of light. I think it's just the low light this morning playing tricks on my eyes. I thought they might possibly look like an impala leg. And obviously tree climbing impalas are quite rare without the aid of a leopard, so definitely something we keep a lookout for. So we just had a nice look at that big African ebony, and Jim wondering, are they evergreen or deciduous? The African ebonies are definitely evergreen trees, one of the few we have in the area. The other main evergreens that we see a lot of are the guarri bushes, apple leaves, and scotias or weeping boer beans. Timbuti is another one, and a lot of these trees all occur around drainage lines. So if we have a look at this drainage line to the right, you will just see these patches of green there, coming up there, and right at the back as well there. So where there's good underground water you quite often find these evergreen trees. And up on the seep line on the left here, we can have a look. The guarries and apple leaves will show you where there's possibly water moving underneath. You can see the green of that guarry underneath that knobthorn tree. He's lost all his leaves for the winter. But I'm not seeing any tracks coming out here, so I think I might head down towards the drainage line. Check a little bit further up to that second bump ahead, and then I think we're going to head back down towards the drainage line. I'm just going to get hold of Ephraim quickly on the radio. Ephraim. What in Konzo have you got there? Copy, thanks. Copy, thanks. I'm on the Gari cut line at the moment, heading towards the Buffelshoek boundary. I will keep you updated if they have crossed. So there's tracks of a very big herd of buffalo heading straight to the road we're on at the moment. I think they're possibly still further to the north, but they might come through. I think we would see a good 200-300 buffalo if they were walking straight towards us, and at the moment I'm not. So, while we've just been chatting about buffalo, oopsie, sorry Andrew. Okay. Karen in New York was wondering, what is the last sign of the buffalo? Well, it sounds like there's a big herd moving straight towards us. I've got a feeling they haven't crossed into Juma yet. They're still in Buffelshoek, but they might be crossing at some point during the day. I know Ephraim is following from behind the tracks, and we're heading straight up. So we're going to have a quick look to the boundary, then I'm going to go have a walk in that drainage line, and hopefully we can find a leopard down there. So while we do that, we're going to cross across to Commander Bond, who's also tracking, and see if he's got any updates for you.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Wendy. I don't greet you with great news of huge prides of lions discovered, but I do greet you with a number of new words that our very kind viewers have been trying to stump me with. It's not so much a question of stumping with meaning, because that is obvious, but it's certainly stumping me with pronunciation. So we have two particularly good ones. One from Edward. Let me try and get this word correct. The fear of long words is hippopotomonstrosesquipedalophobia. Hippopotomonstrosesquipedalophobia. And apparently that is the fear of long words, which I am fast developing. I now have hippopotomonstrosesquipedalophobia. Thank you for that, Edward. And then one from Alan in Auburn, California. You want me to find you some Brobdingnagian pachyderms. Brian, I have no idea what Brobdingnagian means, but perhaps, I'm assuming it's got something to do with elephants. Perhaps, Alan, you could tell us what Brobdingnagian means, because I have absolutely no idea. Brian doesn't either. So, whatever Brobdingnagia is, please let us know. We did have the lion tracks just over there, and they went into this block, and I thought they were going to come out, but they haven't yet. So I don't know what's going on. Brobdingnagian. Been a huge amount of activity on the road though during the course of the night. civets and genets, all manner of other things. And then there's quite a lot of dung on the roads, as you can see. Rosanna in New Zealand, you've noticed quite a lot of elephant dung. I don't know where the Brobdingnagian pachyderms that made the dung are, but I will attempt to find some. I'm finding this lion tracking extremely confusing. I actually think they may have headed into Simbambili, which was a bit of a pain in the buttocks. Wouldn't you say, Brian?
Very much so.
Selfish lions. Not really playing along to the spirit of WildEarth TV. Yeah, no, these things are nowhere to be found in this area. So what we're going to do is head further south into Arathusa and see what else there might be. Yeah. Alas and alack. We're right on the northern boundary of Arathusa now, and we can't go north of this position because this reserve, well, this particular reserve is split into 3 sections: Simbambili, Arathusa, and a little section down to the bottom called Shirley's, clearly after someone called Shirley, and we're not allowed onto either of those two, north and south of here. Interesting question from Chris on tracking and what has been the most impressive animal that I've ever tracked. Chris, I assume you mean sort of in terms of what was the most difficult for me to track. The leopard are always the most difficult to track because they leave the smallest sign. So to track a leopard is really a great skill, and I've worked with some trackers in my life who are astonishingly good at it. In terms of my own I've tracked 1 or 2 leopards successfully in my life, but it becomes quite intuitive. If you're not, if you don't have the eyes that are able to pick up the individual tracks, like some people are, it becomes an intuitive process where you see them heading off a road, and then you kind of circle around and see if you can pick up tracks. You think, well, they'll probably head down there. I know that's a nice area for them, or I know this is a particularly good area. So that's basically how it is with leopards, if you're not really in the top echelons. For lions it's a bit easier because there tend to be more than one of them. They obviously weigh 4 times as much as a leopard does, but also through the block. Once you are not on a road anymore, it does become pretty difficult. So they're probably, of the animals that we do track, they're probably second hardest. The best animal to learn to track on, and I still like to do this, is a rhino. They are the best ones to track, and unfortunately for them, they are the easiest animals to track because they drag their feet. And that means that when they go off the blocks, even in dry grass like this, it's not hard. If you've got it's a really good way to learn to track because they're obviously very heavy, and because they drag their feet, they're quite easy to follow through the grass. And I say quite easy, that's not to say that it's always very easy to follow them. Elephants, surprisingly, despite their vast mass, can be quite difficult to track. Not as anything like a lion or a leopard, but because they lift their feet when they walk, and they've got those soft pads on the bottom of their feet, they're not as easy to track as rhino, for example. So the poor old rhino, who happen to be under the most threat, are actually on foot the easiest to find. I still love tracking rhino, especially in the evenings, and I remember a wonderful experience I had with a friend of mine. We were walking down, we were both off at Ngala, north of us, beautiful reserve where I used to work, where I cut my teeth, as it were, and we went out one afternoon and we found some tracks heading towards a waterhole, and we followed them. We were both young and very inexperienced. We followed them down to the waterhole, then found where he'd been rolling in the mud. Then we followed them back away from the waterhole, found where he'd been rubbing his body against trees, and he'd pulled off some ticks, and we could feel the mud in our hands. We'd peeled it off and it was wet and sort of a little bit warm still. And then we'd follow the mud trail and a little bit kicking where he'd been grazing, and eventually we came upon him in a clearing, and he was just grazing away peacefully, and he never knew that we were there. We hid behind a tree and made sure the wind was good, and we just had a wonderful experience with him. But it was the amazing sense of satisfaction of having actually found him from the tracks. It's difficult to describe. I suppose it's like any kind of great achievement that you have, but it was the first animal that I'd ever tracked fully on my own, and it was just a wonderful feeling. Just going to get an update quickly from the Arathusa Game Drive channel. Stations, how many stations at that sighting? Okay, copy, thanks. Just go with the position, please. Okay, I'm not copying. No problem, thanks a lot. I'll get closer to the south to the pool. And then, in terms of tracking cheetah, nice question from Tina. You know, what about cheetah? Can you track them? Tina, you can, very like leopard, but because they're not territorial, it's often a lot more, not necessarily more technically difficult, but it's difficult because they, you know, like the last two cheetah we saw, they walked an enormous distance, and so you don't know, you can't track them intuitively. You have to follow them basically footprint by footprint, and they'll move huge distances. So they move further than leopards, and because they're not in territories, it's very difficult to predict where they're going. But yes, absolutely, you can track anything if you have the skills. And I mean, certainly the Bushman trackers, they would track kudu across, well, the Kalahari now, but certainly there are trackers who track kudu across the Karoo, which is a very dry area in the center of South Africa. It's not easy substrate, which means that it doesn't leave obvious hoof marks, and very difficult to do. I wouldn't even attempt it, but there are people who can do it. Question from Charlene in Los Gatos. Do we ever see serval? Charlene, we've seen two since I've been here. Well, I've seen one and Brent saw the other. And so we do see them here, but not usually. And to track a serval, well, you know, a serval weighs the same as a house cat, a little bit more than a house cat. Can you imagine going around tracking your house cat through the grass in your garden? It would be almost impossible. So I don't think that many serval have been successfully tracked in their time, but we do get them here, and it is always such a privilege to see them. But in terms of tracking them, I think it'd be very difficult indeed. In fact, I think it would be pretty much impossible. A lot of the great tracking dogs, of course, will use smell, and we as humans, unfortunately, have lost the sensitivity in our noses to use smell. So, yeah. A little bit of rain in the air, a little bit of precipitation. So it was very hot yesterday, and often after it's been very hot, a front will move through like it has here. Hippopoto monstros escapedalophobia. Say that after a heavy night out. Brian, are we all right with this rain?
So-so.
So. There's a leopard track. Interesting question from Deb. Sorry, there are leopard tracks going up and down this road, but they're not fresh. They're underneath a whole lot of civet tracks. It's difficult to tell which ones are fresher. I don't think either are very fresh, unfortunately. We'll carry on this way. So Deb, you want to know about envenomation in snakes, and if an animal is envenomated and the snake that has envenomated it disappears for some reason, will another animal eat it? That's a good question. I think the answer is yes, I do think they would eat it. I think a lot of animals are a lot more immune to the venom than we are, and I think that you'll find that the makeup of that, the poison of the venom is almost immediately broken down once it gets into the bloodstream of an animal. So for example, we can eat snakes quite easily, as long as you chop the head off and don't try and swallow the... Well, in fact, I believe that we are actually able to digest the venom. I think you'll probably be able to digest the venom. There's some cat activity here. We're going to just turn around. It's not very fresh, but it is here. So let's just turn around. It's like a male leopard. So Deb, yeah, I think you'll find most animals. So for example, a good example would be if a cobra killed a puff adder, which does happen from time to time. If that happened, I think that if a honey badger, for example, came across the cobra, not the cobra, came across the puff adder, I think it would eat it, and I don't think it would have a huge effect. Now, apparently, the venom, when it gets into your blood, it depends obviously what kind of venom it is, but it's once it's in your bloodstream and in your endocrine system, that it creates a hassle. I think your stomach juices, so as long as you didn't have lacerations down your esophagus, I think your stomach acid and the acid of animals in their stomachs would definitely get rid of the effects of the protein in a snake's venom. Nice question, thanks Deb. There were some leopard tracks going down this road, then they turned around and went up the other way, and I'm not sure which one's fresher. I don't think either of them are very fresh, so we're just going to carry on. Gail, you've noticed that everything is quite a lot drier. You've noticed how dry everything is here, and your question is basically, do animals experience water stress, especially older and younger ones? So are they the ones that are affected the most? For sure they are. Remember that they're all adapted to dealing with a dry season like this. This is not a particularly dry season, so they can cope with things as they are now. But absolutely, Gail, if a drought persists, it's always the old and the young that will be most affected. Just watch out for our signal here. It might not be as good as it could be. I'm sorry about that if you do lose us. There's definitely some male leopard action on the road here. Perhaps Tingana, who we haven't seen for a while. Come on, Wendy, don't give up on me now. low range in. Brian, shout if you see a leopard.
Sure.
We don't want to drive past it by mistake. And the weeping wattle is a winter feast for elephants. You can see the elephants have absolutely lacerated it. They've broken it off, they've eaten the bark, and you can see this is not the first time that's happened to the tree. And you can see that by the fact that there are multiple stems coming out of the ground around the tree. And that means every time it gets broken, it tries to grow again from different parts of the ground. And it's now sort of multi or triple stemmed, but it's actually only one plant. You're only looking at one plant there, which I always find amazing. Can't hear any alarm calling, just the gentle rustle of this wind blowing through the leaves. Like Brian and I said earlier, it has got a wonderful atmosphere to it this morning. I think if it stayed grey like this, as it does in many parts of Europe, for example, we'd get a little depressed. But it's really nice every so often to have this kind of eerie greyness in the wind. Right, on we go. In Santa Ana, while we're looking for any kind of mammal life out here. Whoops, hold on there, Brian. Sorry about that. You want to know, are there any wild animals that I would like to see in the United States? Absolutely, there are plenty. I think for me though, I've always been a little bit fascinated by wolves, so I'd quite like to see wolves. I have been to the United States but failed to see any wolves. I'd also like to see a Earth happened there. Oh well, car's still moving. I'd also like to see a Kodiak bear. I think that would be wonderful to see, and I believe Brent also wants to see a Kodiak bear. A friend of mine from not far from here has done a number of expeditions to the US to teach tracking, and he has found he's been tracking bear on foot with American students and found them on foot, and says that they are infinitely more terrifying than finding a lion on foot. So that's quite interesting. He also managed to find mountain lion on foot, which no American that he'd been training had managed to do. So it was incredible to take the Shangaan skills. There's a Shangaan fellow from here who went out there and they managed to track cougars, which is just incredible. I do not possess that level of skill on the tracks. Smell that. It smells like the dung. I know exactly what it is. There was the buffalo carcass that the Nkuhuma Pride had there yesterday. Or not yesterday, a few weeks ago, last week Sunday. They were eating around here. So I think the smell of lion dung and buffalo carcass is hanging in the air. In fact, there it is. We can go and look at it. You're feeling squeamish? Put your drink down. Don't take a mouthful of food just yet. there is a strong odor about the place. There is the buffalo, or there was the buffalo. And it's quite, look at the Franklin there. See the Franklin there? Franklin is probably picking out maggots or fly larvae. That's very interesting. Crested Franklin at the buffalo carcass. But what's very interesting to me here is that I don't think there's been a huge amount of hyena activity here, and that's bizarre. There's no ways that the carcass would be in that state if the hyenas had been around here. The vertebra would have been torn apart. The ribs have been bitten off, but that I think is the lions. They've definitely bitten off the front of the nose like that. Also definitely the lions. But the hyenas would have torn the vertebra apart had they been here. And so I don't think, maybe one or two have, but there hasn't been a huge amount of hyena activity. To find a vertebral column still totally intact like that is astonishing. Vultures have also clearly picked quite a lot of the meat clean, but there is a little bit left there. The smell is quite overpowering, Brian.
Quite pungent.
It is pungent, yes. That is also, of course, doubled by the fact that just next to me, and we won't be able to get a camera angle on it, I don't think, is an enormous pile of a rich brown, well, black actually, lion dung, which, as I've mentioned before, smells like the bowels of hell. There we go. Well done, Brian. Classic shot for the day. An amorphous clump of lion poop. Right, that's how close we are to it, everybody. So before I gag, we're going to carry on. Blech. Very unpleasant. Of course, the trick when you're on Arethusa is to make sure that you don't drive off the property, because we're slightly less familiar with it. We do have to check our maps every so often. And I believe Brent was answering some questions about evergreen trees. And this is where you'll find the evergreen trees, mainly in these drainage line areas. Mainly magic worries, but they're the odd spikethorn bush. The peltiforum, like the one we saw that had been destroyed, is an evergreen. But the rest are mainly just hanging on to their last of their winter leaves, or last of their summer leaves. Then of course you get things like the jackalberry, which are semi-deciduous, and that just means that they will lose their leaves, but very quickly, and then they replace them very quickly, and sometimes the whole tree doesn't lose leaves at the same time, and they don't go dormant in the winter like many of the trees do. Beautiful example here of a jackalberry tree. There's a bushbuck there, just quietly standing in the shade. You don't see them very often. It's a bushbuck ewe, and she's standing in the shade of a magnificent jackalberry tree. And the jackalberry is semi-deciduous. So Brian will just pan up into it just now once we've looked at the bushbuck, and you'll see that some of the leaves are yellowing, and they'll drop slowly off and be replaced almost immediately. So jackalberry is very seldom completely without leaves. Very peaceful down here. Kind of place you'd like to sit under the tree and have a cup of coffee. Hey, Brian?
Mm.
While we're looking at the bushbuck there, bushbuck make small pellets of dung. And Bree, you've been looking on Wikipedia about impala, and you say that you've read about traditional South African game called bokdrolspoeg, which is basically the spitting of impala or kudu dung. You want to know if this is in fact real. Embarrassingly, it is, Bree. There are a few things about South Africa that are inexplicable in the rest of the world. As I've mentioned before, the rusk is one of them, a hard and stale piece of sweet bread that we consider a delicacy here. The other being bokdrolspoeg, or the spitting of an animal's dung for entertainment. It's not only impala and kudu, of course, that are used. You can use bushbuck dung if you want. Depends on, I suppose, the shape of your lips and the, the skill of your tongue as you spit animal dung from it. I wouldn't recommend using lion, leopard or hyena, but I suppose if you were stark raving insane you might. But the general idea is a brown pellet from a ruminant. Giraffe would probably work quite well for a beginner. It's quite large. Then when you're really skilled you can use steenbok dung too. But you don't want to be doing that before you're a highly experienced bokdrolspoeger. Right. On that note, I think we shall press along the drainage line here. I have done it myself. In fact, I've done it for WildEarth. We did it for a couple of kids who were watching from Ohio.
I'm sure I saw you yesterday as well.
I may have been doing it yesterday, yes. Yes, I think I was actually. Yeah. Some things are just not explicable, and we should leave them there. Thank you for that, Brian. And hang you in a buffalo film now. Here are the spike-thorn bushes I was talking about, the other evergreen trees. There is an impala. Running high speed away from us. That's quite an interesting tree there. In the absence of large spotted cats, we can have a look at that tree. See the dead leadwood over there? Oh, sorry. In the dead leadwood is another tree dwelling, and it is a fig tree, Ficus stulmanii, or a strangler fig, and it's growing up in that dead leadwood tree there. You just get in on it there. Sorry, left. That's it there. Yeah. Yeah, there you can see it now. So that's the roots there of the ficus tree, the fig tree, that are growing into, they often grow into leadwood trees, which is quite interesting. I'm not sure why or how, because leadwoods are obviously very dense. I suspect perhaps it's because the wood borers, which might affect their seeds on other trees, don't grow in them. So that is Ficus stulmanii, the strangler fig. So everybody, those leopard tracks were quite old, so I'm sorry about not finding them, but we may pick up a bit later. Oh, and the size of the bushbuck, we don't see them very often. And Anna Marie, nice question from you. Are they smaller or larger than steenbok? They're quite a lot larger, actually. They're just a little bit smaller than impala. And in fact, the rams are pretty much impala sized. So round about him. So steenbok's about 11 kilos. A duiker is about 17 kilos. A bushbuck probably sits at about, I'd say, 40 to 50 kilos. And an impala ewe about 50 kilos, and a ram, big ram, up to 70. So that gives you an So I'm just going to answer one more question, then we're going to go across to Brent, who's heading towards a large herd of something or other. Big animals. Not the biggest. You can guess what they are. Question from Mike about, again, the dry season. Basically, is Mike, although you've inadvertently not asked it like this, it is dry. And we know that a lot of animals, herbivores, will chew on bones, especially when it's dry and they can't get enough nutrients from the grass that they're eating. And Mike, you wanted to know, would a giraffe go to that buffalo carcass and chew on those bones? Mike, I haven't seen them do it on fresh sort of carcass like that still basically smells of death, if you like, for want of a better term. But it's possible. But I think you probably find the giraffe will find bones that aren't covered in sort of grime like those ones are. It's not impossible. I've certainly seen almost as smelly as that being eaten by nyala specifically, but I think they'll probably leave that until it's a bit cleaner of the smelly stuff. Right, we're going to head across to Brent, and I will see what else we can find on Arethusa, and we'll pop along just now. Enjoy what Brent has found, or is finding, or is going towards.
We're just at Buffelshoek Dam and just scanning around with my binoculars to see if there's anything here. Unfortunately not at the moment. There is the reports of a big herd of buffalo that is heading our way. Unfortunately they are still to the north of us at the moment, but we will keep checking that area. They might head towards the Buffelshoek waterhole for a drink. And there we go, Andrew's found a grey go-away bird. Into the Tumbuti tree. So I know you guys have been torturing poor James with bigger words today, and Edward has sent me what he calls a doozy of a word. I'm afraid I have to try read it. I cannot try remember it, so you have to bear with me. This could be quite amusing. This is possibly the longest word I've ever seen. It looks to me to be longer than supercalifragilisticexpialidocious from Mary Poppins, of course. But so it is the morbid fear of short people, something I suffer from on a daily basis, having to walk around the WildEarth camp. And unfortunately, I don't think I'm the only one. So Jean-Dre, Brian, Andrew, myself, I think, and Eugene are all over 6 foot. The rest are morbidly short people, and we have to spend our time with them, and we have learnt to manage and deal with this problem, and we now know what the exact word for this problem is, thanks to Edward. This is going to be a bit of a tongue twister. Let's see, let's give it a go. Zambiano leonogistical ogophobia. Let me try that again. Zambiano logistic. Oh no, bugger. Wait, let me try this again. This is a really, really difficult word. Zambiano just geotactic. No, Okay, one more time. Let's see. Loosen up the tongue for this. Zambia no Leon Geo Logistical Ogophobia. At least I get the ogophobia at the end, but and the Zambian at the beginning. It's the middle part I'm struggling with. Okay, one more time. Zambia no Leon Geo Logistical Ogophobia. I hope I'm saying it correct. I'm quite sure there's some linguists out there who are probably cackling at the moment at my weak attempt at pronouncing a morbid fear of short people. I think for now we'll just refer to them as, or refer to it as a morbid fear of short people. We're going to continue on now after my weak attempt at that word and see what else we can find. There is not much, unfortunately, here at Buffelshoek at the moment, apart from that one go-away bird that Andrew found. He's about to fly in front of us, Andrew. And there he goes to join the other. Oh, there we go, into the Timbuti. We are still getting quite a few raindrops. Fortunately, not heavy enough to send us scurrying for cover. So we will continue to search the bush to see what we can find. Did mention this morning, sometimes these grey days can be a little bit challenging. Also, there was an incredible amount of wind and it would have been very, very dark last night, which is a really great hunting weather, specifically for leopards. So there's a strong possibility that they've got some meat and they're in the middle of a thicket, and we haven't seen any tracks yet, but we will keep looking. Jamie is out and about. She came to give me a hand around the Gowrie Dam while we were looking for that mystery leopard from yesterday, and she's busy walking into the block where the last tracks went and giving us the opportunity to keep you entertained. As I said, it might be a grey day, but never a dreary day out in the bush. Andrew's just going to give the lens a wipe. There's quite a few little water spotlets on it, and he's going to do that as we go through a dip where we might have a little bit of signal breakup. So we will try minimize the interference on the lens for you guys. So we're about to go into this dip. There's another game driver out there. We're going to go check around onto Quarry Pan. Hopefully we get some luck. This is definitely my personal sort of favorite area of Djuma, this sort of north and eastern corner, from Buffelshoek up to Drakensberg Road, all the way across to the southern boundary. I just don't know why, it just really grabs me. I think it's these wonderful open seep lines with the terminalias in it, and I have had some incredible sightings in this area. This is the area where we were fortunate enough to watch the Nkahuma Pride pull down that buffalo that was just to the east of us, and found lots of leopard in this area. So I'm hoping our luck continues in this area. It has been a bit quieter over the last few days, but it's also the area where we had the Birmingham's calling. So we're definitely going to keep checking, and we apologize for all the little spots that are coming onto your lens. We're actually sort of heading towards the direction where that little bit of rain is coming from at the moment, but fortunately, as I said, it's still quite soft and not enough to make us scurry for cover or get under a big green tarpaulin. Those of you who've been watching for quite a while will have seen us under a big green tarpaulin while at a lion sighting, just peeking out every now and then to make sure the lions were still there. So hopefully it doesn't get to that. I don't think so. If we look at the cloud base of the clouds is quite high, and there is a bit of blue sky sort of breaking through. There we go. But it does make for some very dramatic scenes. So we've got a new viewer. Welcome, Mashant from the San Francisco Bay. And strange enough, an interesting fact about the San Francisco Bay before we move on to your question is that it is the largest population of great white sharks, and they fall within the San Francisco city limits around an area called the Farallone Islands. So a really fascinating part of the world. I've read quite a lot on the shark behavior in that area. But back to the African side of the world, and Mashant is wondering how much time does a leopard spend in a tree as opposed to on the ground. So Mashant, it's quite a big misconception that leopards will spend the majority of their time in the trees. They will spend the majority of the time on the ground. And in areas where there's not a lot of other predators like lions and hyenas, leopards will not even put their kills in the tree. They do that to protect their kills from the other predators. And the only other time that they do spend a significant amount of time in the trees is during the very hot months, and quite often there's a lot of flies around at that time, and also sort of really muggy and hot on the ground. So they tend to sometimes lie up in the branches of a tree. There tends to be a bit more breeze, and it does get them away from the flies. So most of the time leopards are on the ground, and that's how we track them. We'll look for their footprints on a nice sandy road like this, and we'll try follow them and hopefully find the animal that's making those footprints at some point. And it can be quite difficult, and we do always try our best, but sometimes the leopards just elude us like they have been for the last little while. We have been quite lucky with Shadow and Sindile. Mashant, a new viewer, that is a female leopard who's got about a year-old cub at the moment, and they spend more time down in the area where James is working this morning in the sort of south and west, so hopefully he might come up with some tracks. At the moment I'm looking for any leopard. Actually I'm looking for any animal that possesses a heartbeat at the moment. I don't think we've actually seen one yet, and you just had to listen to me waffle along. But Mashant, welcome to the Live Safari Drive. It's great to have you with us, and hopefully you keep watching with us, and hopefully we will be able to show you some wonderful animals on this drive and the drives going forward. So Marianne, welcome Marianne. Marianne from Boston is just congratulating me on my attempt at saying Zambianological algophobia. I'm just going to go algophobia, and we'll start with the Zambian and end with the algophobia, and I'll just make up the middle part. Thanks very much for that, Marianne. And Dr. Debbie is wondering, do I possess also a morbid fear of short animals? Well, Dr. Debbie, no, it only seems to be humans, and specifically one human in particular, and that is James. And continuing on that, Anne from Durban, welcome Anne, is saying, obviously I must find it quite difficult due to the different heights in our camp, and you are spot on. I think the main reason I have a morbid fear of short people is because I've known James for so long. I've actually, from my height, watched his hair disappear. So I think that's probably what affects me the most. When I first met him, he had a luscious full head of curly black hair, and now if he's not wearing his beanie or his cap, every now and then the sun will catch it and blind me from the shining of his bald spots. But no, I'm only joking. I'm very fond of our short people in camp, and I said we've been friends for many years now, well, particularly James and myself. And speaking of short animals, and something with a heartbeat, please don't run away, please don't run away. We have, oh, you little creature. Let's go forward a bit. There is a little steenbokkie there. Obviously was not listening to my begging and pleading about running. There we go. How's that for you, Andrew? Oh, sorry, I rolled a bit too far. There we go. Let's try to get it. There we go. Face in the gap. A little male steenbokkie. So we actually saw a steenbok display some very interesting behavior on a sunrise safari. knobthorn, and it seems beset with knobs, that one. But that steenbok was digging up a tuber attached to some grass, and living in very small territories as they do, they quite often will not have any permanent water in their territories, and they do live in quite dry areas. So this morning, I'm sure he's getting, this one in particular is going to get quite a nice little bit of moisture from the grass and the little bit of rain we've been having. But when that isn't an option, they do dig up tubers and bulbs from grasses and different plants, and that's one of the ways they get their moisture. So completely independent of permanent water. Obviously, if there is water around, they will drink, but they don't need permanent water to survive. Honestly, hopefully it'll move. I might move a little bit further forward, see if we can get a better view. Yeah, let's move a little bit forward. And there we go, Andrew's showing that very knobbly knobthorn. And while we're looking at that very knobbly knobthorn, let's have a look to see how clever all our viewers are. So that is a knobthorn tree, but I'm going to ask you, what is the Latin name for a knobthorn tree? What is the Latin name for a knobthorn tree? And you can send your answers to questions@wildearth.tv or use the hashtag Safari Live on Twitter. I'm just going to edge forward a tiny bit. I think we can get another gap. So that very, very dainty little steenbok. There we go. How's that, Andrew? Or should I go a bit further forward?
That's good.
There we go. You can see it's a little male. The horns, the females won't have any horns. Also, quite interestingly, one of the only monogamous antelopes we get out here. So they will only look for another mate if one of their mate dies. And in this area, the two animals that quite often are the ends of the marriages, so to speak, with the steenbokkies, is leopard prey very heavily on steenbok in this area, and as well as wild dog. And we did manage to catch a recording a few days ago. Unfortunately, we had gremlins of that pack of 3 male wild dogs dismembering a steenbok in record time. I mean, we got there within 10 seconds of the wild dog who killed it calling the other 2, and that carcass was completely finished in under 2 minutes. So sometimes you're lucky enough to see both members of the pair at the same time. I have been keeping my eye out for the female, but she doesn't seem to be right here at the moment, but she will be quite close, and we might even see her a little bit further down the road. It looks like the sun is fighting through a little bit, and hopefully going to burn off some of this cloud cover so we can have a beautiful, sunny and fantastic sunset safari. Hey guys, it's just a report coming through on the game drive. I just want to listen to it. Sorry, FM, I only caught a little bit of that update. Please could you go with it again? Okay, copy, thanks. So heading towards Cheetah Cutline, but they're still quite far. Okay, copy, thanks very much. Sorry about that, guys. I just heard a word on the radio that sort of starts me getting a quiver, and that is my Dutch, which is actually a bit of a strange word, because it's not actually the true word. It's more of a sort of guiding colloquialism for wild dog. The proper word for wild dog is mashawa, but there's wild dog being spotted, unfortunately, quite far to the east of us and heading south away from us, back towards a property called Mala Mala, and that is where the half-tail pack is denning. So strong possibility it is the half-tail pack animals. Unfortunately, it doesn't sound like they're coming our way. It's still nice to know that they're around, and hopefully in the near future, once those puppies become a bit older and they start coursing with the rest of the pack, they will start coming up into this area. I think that's probably the best description I've ever heard of a wild dog hunting, is that they course, and they sort of spread out and course through the bushveld until they spot something, and then they just hit into that fifth gear, and they can run at incredible speeds for an incredibly long time, around 60 kilometers an hour for up to about 4 kilometers. Andrew, you spotted a track.
Elephant track.
An elephant track. I'm glad you can see an elephant track. You know, it is quite big. Sort of takes up most of the road. We are actually starting to do quite a bit of tracking training with the cameraman, to add a little bit of help for us as well, and also obviously the cameramen are really quite excited about learning a new skill, and this will obviously help. And sort of what we're aiming to do is almost try get a similar relationship, which we do have, like a lot of us have had with our trackers in the past. So it is a very close team. We do work with each other at very close proximity a lot of the time, and we spend a lot of time together. So it is in that way, a very similar dynamic to the sort of guide and tracker relationship that we've had, except the main difference is our trackers could track. But hopefully we can get the cameramen up to a standard where they don't embarrass themselves, although they have made incredible leaps and bounds already with the track identification, and it's a huge help to have the cameraman behind us, especially now while I'm talking to you guys. Andrew is keeping a look on the road ahead, and also checking around to see if they can spot something for us as well. So it is a very important team dynamic that we work with here. So well done to Raisa, Ron, Pretty Nightmare, and Bree, who got, a herd of elephants walking straight towards us. Who got that question right. Oh, this is interesting. Tuskless female. Just their general, when I have to keep still here, they just don't look like they're the most relaxed. But sorry, you guys all got that right. It was an acacia nigrescens. Hello, old lady. We're not here for trouble. So now important to keep your voice calm. And watch her. Quite often as an elephant walks past, there we go, you see they quite often will do that displacement behavior we spoke about the other day, when they'll walk at an angle past you. They seem to be on quite a mission. It looks like they might stop and start feeding shortly. There we go. I'm just going to wait for the rest to pass, and then I'm going to turn around. On these strong windy days, the elephants can be a little bit unrelaxed. So we definitely, and just from the general demeanor of this herd, I'm not going to go bashing and crashing into the bush after them. I will definitely try to stay with them while they're where we can approach on a road. It means keeps our revs quiet and silent. Although some of the animals seem to be calming down quite nicely now, like this female right next to us, who's busy breaking up what looks to be a little Dicrostachys bush. Can't see exactly. No, maybe not. I'll have a closer look just now. Could be just a little bush willow. Yep, she's after the little bush willow. See how she's removed the big piece of branch, and there's only a little bit of bark left there, and she's now using her foot to try to dislodge that piece of bark. And that piece of bark is very important. That is the cambium layer. It's the part of the tree that transports the nutrients from the roots through to the rest of it. So these ellies are very highly mobile. I think they're going to pop out on the road behind us and just get a picture of that. We're going to try zoom around and stop on the road. Obviously, we'd rather let them come into our space than us forcing ourselves on this space. Just the way they're moving makes me think they were a little bit unrelaxed. I'm not sure why. It can be because at this time of the year, they have to travel vast distances between food and water, so they can be a little bit jumpy or edgy. But if we behave correctly around them and we respect them, we shouldn't have any problems with them. So while we're on the subject of elephants, and I'm going to turn around to try and catch up with them, Tina is wondering, do elephants ever lie down to sleep? Well, elephants and giraffes, we'll stick with the ellies for now since we've just seen them. They do, specifically when they're younger and on very hot days. You can often find them lying down on their sides. It's very unusual to see a big elephant bull, for example, doing that, but I have seen it. But because they are so big and heavy, they normally will find a fallen down tree, or more common, a termite mound, or even a drainage line, and they'll lie on the edge so they don't lie all the way down, so they're able to get up. And I was tracking in the Wanetsi concession in the Kruger National Park, right on the Mozambique border, and I was tracking with my old tracker Glass, who I've spent many hours in the bush, and we faced some very interesting times together, and we heard this incredibly strange noise, and sort of almost like a snore but not, and both of us who had spent an immense time in the bush had absolutely no idea what that noise was. So off we snuck closer, and it was a monster Kruger elephant bull sleeping on the edge of a drainage line and actually snoring. I've only ever seen a big bull do that once. I've seen little ones do it, but never snore like that. It was absolutely incredible. It's one of the strangest sounds I've ever heard. And on the giraffe, the giraffe do lie down. Obviously with that long neck, they don't lie down flat. They will lie down on their sort of haunches though, and they do rest like that. But again, being not as big as an elephant and being a possible bull, they're moving really fast. Prey species, they are far more awake. Hello, old lady. You can see, I don't think we're going to keep following this herd. You can just see by their behavior, they're a little bit upset. She might calm down now. One's just run off behind us. That's fine. And looking at her, she doesn't have any tusks, and I think that is a genetic. That's not that she's broken her tusks. Sometimes elephants are born without tusks. But you can see they're just really moving very quickly and not very relaxed. So I think we'll get a picture of their bottoms, those big grey behinds disappearing into the bush, and we're going to leave them. There's no point in harassing these animals. We do have so many wonderfully relaxed herds of elephants in the Sabi Sands that if we start harassing ones that are not, it could cause them to become less friendly. So we're going to just let them move off. If they stop and decide to start feeding next to us, that'll be fine, but we're not going to go off the road at all and push the situation. So I'm freewheeling, keeping my voice very calm. You can see they've slowed down a little bit. They definitely are on a mission though. I'm not sure to where. They're stopping to feed very briefly.
How strange.
Yeah, they've actually stopped to listen now. So they're on the move again. So even though they are feeding, they are sort of stopping, grabbing a bite, and then continuing on. Sometimes when you see elephant herds moving like this, they could have been harassed by a musk bull, and they might be looking for females in estrus, and none of the females are quite as receptive as the bull would like, and they can get quite aggressive and chase the ellies around and push a lot of the elephants around. So sometimes when you find an elephant herd moving at this sort of speed, they're trying to avoid a bull who's in must. For those of you who might be new or not sure what must is sort of the male version of coming onto heat and with elephants, and elephants can only really mate when there's a female in estrus and a male in must, and it's a heightened period of hormones in the males, and they can be a little bit aggressive and unpredictable at that stage. And certain elephant herds, if there's no females that are ready for mating, will try avoid these bulls at all costs. We're just going to maneuver on a little bit. They have slowed down a bit. As I said, I'm not going to bash and crash after them, but while they're walking parallel to the road, we'll stay with them. And you'll notice I'm going to try to keep my revs very, very, very low. My movement of the vehicle very slow, steady movements. We don't want any fast, sudden movements that might upset them. So they definitely have slowed down, started feeding a little bit more. Just gonna mosey on up to the corner and stop and let them walk past us. Love Mobile South, Drakensberg Road, just to the north of junction with Central. There we go. They seem a lot calmer now. Slowed down, started feeding, which probably can never be 100% sure. Definitely sort of lends towards my theory that they might be being harassed by a big ellie bull who's in must, and they think they might possibly have put enough distance between themselves and that ellie bull, but they're still probably going to keep moving for a while now, but they are stopping to feed. So as we have a look at those elephant feet as they idle on past, Juliet from Montana was wondering, what does the bottom of an elephant's foot feel like? Does it feel like leather? I think that's a very good description, but it's actually a lot softer than you would think it is. Sort of a nice soft leather, but yes, definitely does feel like leather. It's actually probably softer than the rest of the body. They've got a very, very interesting foot structure. So they've got a very big spongy pad, and you can see the toenails there, but you would be amazed at the shape of what's inside an elephant's foot. Like this little guy here. That's definitely a little boy, just by the way he's behaving. He thought about being brave and giving us a head shake, then decided it was better to stay with Mom. There we go. This is a little cow, giving us the once over. You can see that very sharp angular head, and that's one of the ways we can tell it is a female. Bulls have a much more rounded head. And I think here comes the last ellie. Is a little young bull. probably around 10 or so years old. And you can notice far less angular head, slightly more rounded, as opposed to a very sort of almost triangular head of an elephant cow. So back to Juliet and elephant's feet. So what I wanted to show you is that basically if they've got 5 toes like we do, but they are like that. So they're very long. So if you ever have a look through a bisection of an elephant's foot, then they've got this incredible sponge almost, and that's what makes it so soft. That's what makes them be able to walk so quietly. This large spongy section of tissue in the middle of that foot with the phalange. Oh no, not phalanges. Phalanges are fingers. Andrew, what are toes again? Tarsals, I think. I might be wrong. I think it's tarsals coming down, and then with that very big spongy substance in the middle, and really fascinating. You wouldn't think they would have a foot shaped like that. There we go. I wouldn't think they would have a foot shaped like that. And you can actually see the different joints and stuff in there, although they are pretty much redundant in the elephant because of the shape of the foot and with that spongy substance there. But we're going to move forward. I think the ellies are going to head off further from the road, and as I said, they've probably been harassed quite heavily by a big bull, and that can make them a little bit aggressive and unpredictable, and there's no need for us to harass them further. Let's just make sure there isn't a big bull coming pounding along behind us. It doesn't look like it. Just see some of them. Unfortunately, I have such a vast array of books, but none of them actually have that sort of foot structure. I would definitely recommend if you guys go Google it and see if you can get an image of that, and then share it on Twitter with the hashtag Safari Live, so everyone can have a look at that really interesting foot structure in an elephant. You can see they've calmed down quite nicely now, and they've started to spread out feeding. They are going into quite a thick block, and said not the most relaxed, so we're not going to push them any further. But we will definitely watch them while we have the opportunity to from the road. So as we watch this little female utilize that incredibly dexterous trunk of hers, Josh from Connecticut is wondering, do I have any idea of the actual grabbing strength of an elephant's trunk? Josh, I don't, but I mean, if you think about the Asian elephants that are used in forestry and whatnot, they probably can lift close on 500-600 kilograms. An African elephant is bigger and stronger, so possibly they could do more, but I'm not 100% sure on the grabbing strength of an elephant's trunk. But that's a really fascinating question. If anyone can find any information out there on the grabbing strength of an elephant's trunk, please send it to me, and you can do that via email to questions@wildearth.tv, or you can use the hashtag Safari Live on Twitter. So those ellies are disappearing off into the bush there, and Patty from Washington has reminded me that apparently I started telling a story about one of my worst experiences with elephants, and then the gremlins took over. I think it was this particular gremlin that did that. There we go. He seems to be quite active on the gremlin front. I think he has something to do with the satellite issues. Yes, Andrew, I think one way we can get rid of the gremlins, we can get Andrew to eat them at some point. I think it'll be quite amusing. But Patty, I'm not 100% sure which story it was, I'm afraid, but I will tell you guys some of the stories. So probably the two places I've had the most scary experiences with elephants have been in northern Botswana and in southern Tanzania. When we first moved into the Kwondo area in northern Botswana, it had been a hunting area for a very long time, but also the fact is that there were very few people that ever went there. So for 7 months of the year, 8 months of the year, there were no people. So the elephants were not used to vehicles and people at all. So they could be quite aggressive when you first came across them. After a few years, they were completely fine, very much like the elephants we see in the Sabi Sands now. But we did have some very close calls with ellies in those early days, and I was fortunate enough that my dad trusted me enough as a teenager to take a vehicle and drive around the middle of the bush by myself. So I think possibly one of the worst elephant experiences I personally had. I used to do the drive from Maun to the camp, which is about 250 kilometers, but because of the roads and the very thick sand, it would often take you up to 9 hours to do that, and most of that sitting in low range second gear, doing not much faster than we're doing now in really thick rutted sand, so you don't even have to touch the steering wheel. I actually used to take a book with me, and while I was on the old Tetsi Fly cut line, which is basically this straight road cut through the Mapani Fault in very thick sand, you could let go of the steering wheel, just keep your foot a little bit on the accelerator and read. And doing this road at night during the summer months was probably one of the most scary, because we weren't shining spotlights and whatnot. We were on a mission to get somewhere, and you're basically just going straight like this, and you've got your headlights, and you generally have a pile of paraphernalia behind you, staff rations, food, gas bottles, drink, and you've got this pile of stuff behind you, so you can't really see. And we take the rear view mirrors off those cars, because driving down those little Mapani cut lines, the rear view mirrors get smashed in a matter of minutes. So off you go, driving happily down at about, I think it was about 9 o'clock at night. I think I left town quite late that day, and all you can hear around you at certain points is just this blood-curdling screaming and trumpeting of elephants, and you can't see them. And I do remember once, all of a sudden, this elephant just came out of nowhere, and she must have stopped about 30 centimeters from my bonnet, and I reacted by stopping the car. And quite often a hat like this is very useful, and I did have a hat sitting next to me, so I was banging the side of the car, shouting at the top of my lungs to try and get her away. And eventually I did take my hat and I threw the hat at the elephant. And quite often something like that, even though a hat's obviously not going to hurt the elephant, whatnot, it just gives them a fright. It sort of shocks them out of what they're doing. So a very important tool in the bush is a hat that you can fling. And we can actually do a practice fling here. You can pretend the elephant is coming at us, and I'm shouting, stop, stop, stop. I don't think she's going to stop, so I fling the hat. That wasn't the best throw. Let me go fetch my hat. But even the movement of the hat could be enough to distract that animal from its aggressive charge. Now I'm going to go pick up my hat. That was quite silly. Now it's full of dust as well. But fortunately, not much sun out today. Scary elephant encounter that didn't actually happen to me. It happened to Norman, who used to work for my dad. He was one of the first guides up there, incredibly experienced, worked for Natal Parks Board, worked all over Africa. And a young elephant had died during the dry season, a baby from probably malnutrition. The mother probably wasn't in the best condition when she had it, and it does happen quite often there. I mean, in a game drive in that part of the world, on average at this time of the year in the dry season, you will see between 1,000 and 500 elephants every game drive. You actually get elephant traffic jams while you're trying to get to the lions. Like, oh, lions, oh, another herd of elephant, oh, another herd of elephant. The distance between the two camps was about 40 kilometers, and my record, because of elephant roadblocks, was about 4.5 hours, what normally took us about an hour. But Norman went to go check on this. They'd seen this elephant carcass from a distance, and the cow had been around, and she was really, really aggressive. So he stopped for quite a distance away, and every day they went back to check to see if the lions or hyenas had started feeding on this elephant carcass. And after about 4 or 5 days, they went there and they couldn't see the female elephant anywhere, so they decided it was safe to go have a closer look. So as they got up to that elephant, and I just remember, this is really incredibly thick sand. You can't drive fast in it. If you can do 25-30 kilometers an hour, it's a lot. And we approached up to this baby elephant and stopped next to it, had a look, and then out of the Mapanis burst the elephant cow. She had obviously gone off for a drink and was still guarding the carcass, and she came charging up to Norman, and he had Italian guests who spoke almost no English, and the elephant charged up to the front of the vehicle, charge. As I said, Norman, incredibly, hugely experienced, sat there shouting, stop it, stop being a naughty elephant, banging the side of the car, threw his hat. And then she moved off behind the vehicle, and we spoke about that displacement behavior when an elephant's still trying to keep an eye on you, but sort of walks away from you to try and create distance, but still watching you. And for some reason, I think the guest or something on the back seat moved or made a noise, and as she got behind them, she came right in and she put her one tusk through the back tailgate, and the other tusk was actually sort of under the tow bar, and she lifted the whole back of the vehicle with 6 people behind Norman. Norman immediately started the car, and luckily her tusk broke, and as Norman hit the ground, he sped off. And we were in camp for all of this, and everyone was a bit shook up that morning. There was quite a lot of whiskey in the coffee, and rescue remedy, for those of you who use homeopathic medicine, my mother was out dosing people with rescue remedy. I'm not even joking. My mother still tries to dose me with rescue remedy. And they didn't speak very much English, so before they went out on the afternoon game drive, we had 6 Italians who couldn't speak any English going, no man, no elefante, no elefante, no elefante, which in the Quando concession and in the dry season is near impossible. As I said, you literally cannot drive 100 meters without being in sight of a herd of elephants somewhere. But so there's lots of stories like that, but I'm sure we'll get to some more of them at a later stage. So we're on Drakensbergen now. We are heading south. I am still constantly checking for any sign of leopard tracks or anything, and we are going to keep going. Thanks very much to Jody, one of our Zoomies, and Roger from Wisconsin, who've given me a helping trunk with that. How much can an elephant lift in this trunk? It's about 600 pounds, 270 kilograms. Thanks very much for that, guys. I mean, that's an incredible weight if you think about it. And I almost think they might possibly be able to lift a bit more, especially one of these big Kruger bulls. But thanks very much for that. I really do appreciate all your help. For those of you who are new and just might be just tuning in, we are live and we are interactive, so you are able to ask us questions about what we're seeing or what we've done and all sorts of stuff about the bush, and you can do that by emailing us on questions@wildearth.tv, or you can use the hashtag #SafariLive on Twitter. So thank you very much, Diane from Michigan. I was confused whether it was phalanges or tarsals, or metatarsals, but it looks like with an elephant is phalanges, or phalanges, fingers and toes. Thanks very much for checking up on me there, and thanks to everyone who's gone and got a shot of the structure of an elephant's foot and popped it on Twitter. We really do appreciate it. I wish I did have a picture to show you, but this is the next best thing, so you guys can have a nice in-depth look at that fascinating structure in an elephant's foot. So we're now going to head south towards the southern boundary and maybe pop in around the Twin Dams area to see if there's possibly any tracks. I don't think anyone's checked in that area yet. So I know we've been chatting quite a bit about phobias, and I attempted the Zambian ogophobia word, and Shanae is wondering, do I think any animals possibly have phobias? I would think almost all of the prey species, specifically impalas and things like that, have lion, leopard, wild dog, cheetah, hyena phobias. I think possibly lion phobia being quite high and leopard phobia as well, but I don't think it's in the same sort of unconventional or unrealistic way a lot of people have phobias about things. I think survival is the most important thing out here, and that was a question from Shanae. Thanks very much for that, Shanae. And now we're going to cross back to Commander Bond, the man who started on the phobias, and he's probably got a few hidden ones of his own.
Zambianoliongeotica logisticolophobia, the fear of small people, indeed the morbid fear. Once more, Zambianoliongeotica logisticolophobia. Thank you very much to Edward Portal for that. Welcome back to Wendy, everybody. I had to say that to you as the first thing I said because it will disappear from my mind almost immediately. Welcome back. I believe you've been looking at some Brobdingnagian pachyderms with Brent, and for those of you who don't know what that means, thank you very much to Alan for explaining that it means colossal, as from Gulliver's Travels by Jonathan Swift. Was it Jonathan Swift? Someone called Swift. Anyway, we found a very beautiful golden-tailed woodpecker there, and that's basically what we were trying to show you. There's a little bit of a bird party going on here. There was some rattling testiculars shouting. There are some tits shouting, some southern black tits. There's the lovely sound of a weed eater going in the background. We're right next to Arathusa Lodge, so I think we're going to press on from the sound of the weed eater. And yes, here we go. Once more, I've lost it already. Zambianoliongeotica logisticolophobia. Thank you very much. And then, lovely from Alan in California, of course, you wanted to know, every time you join us, the elephants seem to go through a chronosynclastic infundibulum. I don't know what a chronosynclastic infundibulum is, but I do like the sound of it. Chronosynclastic infundibulum. Yes, I have no idea what that means either. Thank you very much for all these words. My tongue is painful after all the attempts that I've been making to say them. I believe you've been watching some elephants with Brent. Let's call them what they are, elephants, as opposed to Brobdingnagian pachyderms. And we have, I'm afraid, found not much. We have attempted to find where those lions went, but I'm afraid have been unsuccessful thus far, and the radio in these kind of atmospheric conditions is making things a little difficult in Arathusa, so we're going to head back across towards Juma and Voyatella and see what we can find there. Zambianoliongeotica. I've forgotten it. I told you I'd forget almost straight away. Still a very pleasant morning though, and at night, like I said before, perhaps you've just joined us, it's quite nice to have a change from the sort of universally blue magnificence of the sky, and just every so often have a bit of an eerie day like this where it's chilly and remains chilly and the clouds scud across the sky in the sort of gunmetal grey, and it is quite pleasant to have every so often. Hello Blair in British Columbia. You wondered about Brian's thumb. Well, you're about to be excited by the very thing that you have wanted to see. It is not in retirement. It is just trying to avoid various kinds of toxins as given over, xylene apparently, through the nastiness of the cokies that Brian uses. So he's going to attempt to find some more sort of child-friendly cokies that he can use on his thumb, and in so doing the thumb will make more regular appearances. Until that stage, however, you will have fewer sightings of the thumb. Blair, I hope that made your day or morning. I mean, you are pretty early in British Columbia. Might actually be yesterday. I also think it's a little rough to say that anyone should have a morbid fear of me because of my height. I'm actually not that short. I'm 5'8", which is not enormous. But it is certainly not, well, it's not midget-sized.
It's like 4'8".
It's not 4'8". Tom Cruise is 5'4". He's done all right. The other things we've seen while you've been away was some waterbuck. We did see 2 steenbok. And I just want to say something about the steenbok. It's quite interesting to me because they are, you'll read often that they are solitary, and I don't believe that to be the case. And I have read that they live in pairs, monogamous pairs, and the reason you don't see the pairs often together is that because they are short and small, the easiest way for them to avoid predation is to not be seen. And so they stay in visual contact with each other, but they'll hide away, just sort of away from each other, so that they are as unobvious as possible. Hello Brandy in Kansas, and while we're driving along in this fairly game-free environment at the moment, you want to know what is my scariest moment in the bush and what is my favorite moment in the bush. Scariest, various different times. Oh, there's an elephant. There's a Brobdingnagian pachyderm over there. You see the Brobdingnagian pachyderms, Brian?
I do.
I think we're just going to go off-road to have a closer look at the Brobdingnagian pachyderms. There's some Brobdingnagian pachyderms over there, everybody.
Marvelous.
Marvellous to see some Brobdingnagian pachyderms. Oh, I do love to see Brobdingnagian pachyderm. Brandy, while we're getting into the sighting, scariest moment, I had a leopard on the bonnet once, which was fairly unpleasant. Not been a couple of others, but not. I tend not to try and remember them too closely. I haven't had particularly scary elephant times. I'm just going to get into the sighting, and then we'll have a bit more of a discussion on it. But my most memorable moments have almost universally been on foot, either with animals or just in wild spaces where, I don't know how to describe it, but where the energies just kind of align nicely and you can just feel a sense of immense peace. And those are the things that make me smile when I think back to sitting on a koppie or sitting in a huge tree in a forested area. Those are the things that make me smile the most. Quite a nice herd of Brobdingnagian pachyderms here, quite a large one. And they're feeding just through the last of the greenery here. There's a cow there, she's looking very skinny. And she does look like she's lactating, so I suspect that the strains of the winter and the fact that she is having to feed a youngster are probably taking their toll. Her hips are sticking out. I've seen a few elephants like this now. I'm starting to see more and more of them as the dry season progresses. I think I'm just going to ease in there, Brian. Yeah, towards that elephant there. Well, that pachyderm in front of us, of course, is not quite yet Brobdingnagian. Tiny little one there. A little bit nervous of us. Not sure why. Just going to ease gently in here. Boy chaps, we just want to say hi. Got us into a great position here. There's some pretty thick bush through there. Let's try these ones, Brian. So I'm going to stop here briefly. There's a very little one there. Tiny little thing with its mum. And just standing close by, possibly feeling a little bit nervous in the wind, and possibly feeling a little bit nervous with us quite so close by. Tiny little baby. Beautiful little thing. You can see his trunk doesn't reach the ground, and that's because it's just too uncoordinated. He'd probably stand on it and do himself some damage. That's his mum. So we're just going to pop around the corner here. Don't be nervous. It's okay. Oh, very cross. Very cross. Don't be cross. youngster there gave a very, very half-hearted shake of the head. Still trying to eat grass, you know. They really do far prefer to graze if they can. So while we were chatting along there and I was driving into the sighting, I said that my most favourite moments have been sort of sitting peacefully either in a tree in a sort of riverine area, or sitting on a rocky outcrop overlooking the Drakensberg with the sun going down, often with some friends, or sometimes alone. And those are the sort of memories that make me smile, as I said, Brandy. And in terms of scary moments, you know, I try to, well, I don't forget them, but mostly the scary moments we have out here are because we've made an ill-advised judgment on how close we should get to animals, or we haven't been aware enough and we've stumbled upon animals. I mean, it's certainly not impossible that you can create a situation where totally inadvertently, where you threaten an animal to the extent that it feels the need to charge you or chase you. But I don't remember those I don't have those memories that in my mind with a great sense of fondness, because it normally means that I've done something wrong and that I've threatened an animal to the extent that it feels the need to chase me. Now, there have been one or two times where it's been pretty scary having, say, an elephant come herring out of the bush at you at full charge with 6 people on the back of the Land Rover. And that's pretty scary, but it's, you know, they're not sort of memories that I like to relive too often, simply because that's not what the bush is to me. It's not a big scary place. It's a place of much more of peace for me. That is a wonderful scene. Thank you for that, Mr. Elephant. And I suppose if you ever wanted to, I mean, the big advantage of being in a wild place like this with, you know, the number of big animals that we have here is that I mean, there are lots of wilderness areas around the world where you can go and you can enjoy yourself and you can get that sense of wilderness that a place like this transfers. Here there's always just a little bit of an edge to it, because there are animals that are potentially dangerous. There are elephants, there are lions, there are leopards, there are buffalo around. So it just makes you that much more aware, and I think that extra awareness when you're on foot especially just makes you that much more in tune to what's going on here, and perhaps you therefore get much more of a sense of the wilderness here. And perhaps that's the advantage for me of being in a place where there are big animals like this. We're going to just nip a little bit forward and see if we can't get another look. Sometimes, you know, it's good to test yourself, or I find it's good to test myself, and I go out into the bush and I'll go alone, and I might push the boundaries a little bit. Nobody will know where I am. I might go and track something, see if I can find it, and if I can find it, well, that's great, but there's always a slight risk that nobody knows where you are, which is, I think, is quite important sometimes. There's some more elephants behind us, but I can just hear them. Alright, so Brent has succeeded again today. We'll go away from these brobdingnailian pachyderms to some less brobdingnailian ones. Well, they're not pachyderms at all. We'll head across to Brent now, where there is a herd of buffalo heading into Djuma. Marvelous. See you just now.
Welcome back, everyone. So that buffalo herd we heard about coming towards us from the Buffalo's Hook side has crossed, and we're now just to the north of the Buffalo's Hook waterhole with this big herd. I'm guessing, from what I can see, probably 300, 400 odd buffalo. And the Birmingham boys have been found to the north of us, and I am hoping that this herd of buffalo brings them south, and hopefully they come visit the sunset safari. A nice cool day like this, they could move quite a big distance, especially if they hear a big herd of buffalo like this. 5 male lions, a herd of buffalo is basically, the sound of a herd of buffalo is basically like if any of you have kids, you hear the ice cream truck going past the front of the house. Probably the same sort of reaction, jumping for joy and heading directly towards that sound. So always another nice thing to look out for when we are in these big herds of buffalo is a possibility of a yellow-billed oxpecker. So we will be keeping a check. So far I've only seen red-billed, and I think the last person to see a yellow-billed oxpecker was Mark on a kudu. I've seen them on zebra and I've seen them on big herds of buffalo in the Sabi Sands. Never seen them on a kudu, but the buffalo starts to mobile east a bit, so we're going to move forward a little bit, see if we can get up ahead and stop and let them engulf us. Oh, before we go, let's have a look. He's a funny looking chap. There's a bull with quite a distinct boss on him, and it does tend to give him quite a strange look on his face. There we go, he's turning towards us now. Almost looks like he's a bit dozy, though I'm sure he isn't. There we go, there's an oxpecker, red-billed. Okay, let's move forward and have a look at the rest of this herd. We have been chatting about it a bit, how it seems at this time of the year lions have a lot more success in their buffalo hunting endeavors, and that is possibly because the buffalo do have to move quite big distances between water and food, and they will lose a little bit of condition, making them just that little bit less formidable as they are in the wet season when they've got lots of water and food around. And it is nature there balancing itself out. So the winter dry months are generally a time of plenty for animals like lions, and the summer months a time of plenty for the herbivores. It looks like we are going to just sneak ahead of the herd now. Looks like the front runners are up ahead here. And there is a plethora of different birds taking advantage of a big herd of buffalo like this. Not only the oxpeckers that are feeding off the buffalo themselves, but we have some magpie shrikes, which we'll show you shortly, fork-tailed drongos, hornbills, franklin, all feeding off the insects that are being disturbed by this big herd of buffalo. Hello, flows. We're going to try to position ourselves smack bang in the middle, and hopefully we get engulfed by this herd. Oh, sorry, buffalo, noisy stick. On the horn. He's walking away now, but his right hand horn seems to have developed a lot bigger than his left hand horn. I will try to get another view of him. You can see. Oh, where's he gone now?
I got him on the screen, I think.
Has he still got his back to us? Don't think that's him. Oh no, there. Yes, at the back. You can just see over that buffalo's back. There's the one horn seems to have been developed. Quite interesting. I have seen that before, but not very often. I'm going to try just sneak a little bit further forward. I mean, there's always differences between the buffalo's horns. There he is. Andrew's got him. See how thick the one side is. I think he's a bit self-conscious about that. Just going to move slowly, a little bit further, see if we can catch another glimpse of that strange buffalo bull. No, I don't think we're... We'll just see if he pops up again. Don't want to chase them. Oh, there's quite a lot of interesting buffalo in this, and you can see different ages and males and females, and quite nice to have a look at the different horn structures. And no buffalo has the same horn. Just a quick update on the oxpeckers from Edward. Apparently Scott has seen a yellow-billed quite recently. It must have been while I was on leave.
Yeah, I was with them, but it was on a buffalo herd.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
There we go. Andrew says he was with it. Look at this cow here. She's also got quite an interesting boss for a cow. Quite an old cow, judging from her. She's, you know, she's just behind that branch. Wait for her to turn her head back towards us. There we go. Very gnarled, especially for a cow. Very bumpy. But she is quite old, and she's definitely been scratching that against some trees by the looks of things. Probably got an itch behind her ear, and you can see that sort of yellow build-up on the edge there, and that's from them trying to get a branch between their ear and their horn to rub away possibly some ticks, other parasites. I'm keeping my eye out for that buffalo with the very strange horns, as well as still checking for yellow-billed oxpeckers. So far I've only seen red-billed. Then we have a Birchall starling who's also taking advantage of all the insects disturbed by a big herd of buffalo. And we've got lots of fork-tailed drongos. I love that sound. A little buffalo argument somewhere. Nice big cow in front of us there. I really would like to see that bull again with that very overdeveloped right side. I'm going to try a bit of displacement behavior of our own by driving away from an angle like we see the elephants do to us, to try to see if we can look back and possibly see that very interesting young bull. We've been chatting about all these different birds that are taking advantage of the insects disturbed by this big buffalo herd. You see how moving really slowly like this, we happen to get in a little bit closer, and that bull with the funny horn moved in there. But Diana was just wondering whether, because of all the increased bird species that are coming in to feed off the insects, are there any raptors or birds of prey? There he is, Andrew. Nice, there we go. Now you can see Dana, sorry, I'll get back to your question in a second, but I'm just worried we might not get another view of him. So it almost looks like his body is sending almost all the growth to the right-hand side of that horn, and that could definitely possibly become a problem. I also wonder if there's possibly an abscess under there. I can't see clearly now. He is behind other buffalo, but we will try to keep a look on him. Hopefully he does come out into the open a little bit. So, Diana, back to your question. Not to my knowledge, I haven't ever seen raptors sort of follow the birds that are following the buffalo herds. I think a lot of these birds are quite fast moving and be quite difficult for a raptor to take advantage of. But in terms of carnivores following buffalo herds, lions are great at following, at buffalo herds. So this Birchill starling's just landed just off the bonnet. He's taking advantage of the insects disturbed by our car. Try to see if I can spot that bull again. Very interesting. Definitely going to have to ask around or do some research about that, and hopefully you guys, if any of you guys manage to get a screenshot of that, please tweet it so I can have a proper look at it after drive. And remember, you can also email it to us, and that email address is questions@wildearth.tv, and the Twitter handle is #SafariLive. So cold, windy day like today, they're quite close to water. I've got a strong suspicion that they're going to bed down and chew the cud in this area. There he is again, Andrew. Come back through that gap. There we go. Unfortunately, he is behind the branch. He seems to be quite self-conscious, but there you can see very distinctly that, oh, excuse me, not looking at you. There we go. That right-hand horn is severely overdeveloped in comparison to the left. Hopefully that other buffalo moves out of the way shortly. Now, I'll keep an eye on that, but Andrew, look at this cow having a good scratch here. I mean, she's got that right between her legs and having a really good scratch. And this is one of the methods that a lot of animals like buffalo will use to remove ticks, by friction. And I'm quite sure, I know after being itchy, there's nothing better sometimes than a good scratch. And if we can zoom in that gap on her back leg when we get a chance, Andrew, you can actually see all the ticks sticking off there. And that's what she's trying to get off, as little blood suckers. They're obviously causing her quite a bit of irritation rather than and discomfort. So she's trying to scratch them off, and I'm quite sure that feels quite wonderful. So, just waiting for that guy. Hello, old lady. You can see she's very old. If we go to her bottom, you can see how the skin is starting to sag into her hips. She's starting to get quite a few of those bald spots like we see on the buffalo bulls. Still in quite good condition for an old lady, but she looks like she wants to go use the same scratching post. She did get chased away by that other cow who was using it originally. Yep. Oh, so that tree is obviously a popular spot. Let's see, is she going to pop her leg over? There we go. Going to scratch the same area as the other one. And there we can see all those ticks on the inside. Just going to try to remove a few of them. Oh, big stretch. I mean, we must consider how lucky we are to have such dexterous hands. Imagine having all those ticks or other parasites on you and not being able to get at them or scratch them or remove them, and having to rely on a slightly bent bush willow to do your scratching. There we go. You can see how there's a bit of mud and smoothness on there now from those two buffalo utilizing that as a scratching post. So buffalo are predominantly grazers, and so much more than 80% will be made up of grass. But during this time of the year, they do sometimes eat leaves, and I have seen them eating off these apple leaves, these small little bushes there that are right just parallel to us that the buffalo just walk past. And further north, they feed off mapanis quite frequently. Now, we're not going to move. We're going to continue with this buffalo herd. Hopefully that interesting male with that very unique horn structure will make another appearance. But in the meantime, we're going to cross back to James quickly so he can bid you adieu, and we'll be back a little later with this lovely large herd of buffalo.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Wendy. We've come back onto Djuma, and in your screen you see a magnificent African hawk eagle. Now they are famed for their devouring of the Michael Johnsons of the bush, which I've mentioned before. That is the guinea fowl, and francolins, they also like them. And normally they hunt in pairs, one of them sort of circling high up, arresting the attention of the potential prey, and the other one coming in from low down and smashing whatever it is that they eat, and then they go off and they eat it together. And I don't know where this one's friend is. In fact, I saw an African hawk eagle in this area. I've seen one a few times, but only one of them. So perhaps this one doesn't have a mate yet. It might be just an adult, not quite into the full flush of adulthood, and maybe that's why. Anyway, that's what that is, an African hawk eagle, and you'll find quite a few raptors this time of the day sitting in the trees rather than flying around, because they are heavy birds. The air is cold and it's blustery, and although it's quite magnificent, well, Brian and I are really enjoying it. The big raptors don't necessarily like it because it's not excellent for them to be flying in. Anyway, thank you very much for your contributions today. Wonderful huge words that all of you have sent through. They're all flushing around in my head so much now that I'm unable to remember any of them. I think, what was the fear of long words? Hippo monstro sesquidalia. Yeah, the hippo monstro sesquidaliaphobia. Take that one, whoever sent that through. So that's the fear of long words, and I now have hippo monstro sesquidaliaphobia. I have that now. Thank you very much. It's been a wonderful morning. Quite quiet, but just a lovely atmosphere around the place, a bit eerie, which I quite enjoy, and Brian certainly has enjoyed it. So thank you to Brian on camera. Thank you to Tara and Jessica in the final control. It's been a lovely morning, and I'm going to leave you. There's Brian's thumb coming up. Thank you. And we're going to leave you. We'll pan back onto this lovely African hawk eagle and send you back to the huge herd of buffalo, which sounds wonderful, with my old friend Brent. Thank you, and we'll see you this afternoon.
So welcome back everyone. Just trying to see if we can find one of those yellow-billed oxpeckers in that group. Unfortunately, we didn't get another view of that funny shaped bull. Hopefully you guys got some screenshots, and please put them up on Twitter with the hashtag Safari Live, so we can have a look at it later and try to figure out what's going on. If not sure, I want to see if there's maybe possibly an abscess. I didn't have a chance to have a really good look he kept ducking behind the other buffalo. But it's been such a fantastic sunrise safari. As I said, it might be grey but never dreary. We have unfortunately not been able to find any of the cats, but we did have a really nice elephant sighting, and always amazing to spend some time with a nice big herd of buffalo. So great to be out here. I wouldn't want to be anywhere else, and thanks again for joining us. We really do appreciate all the questions and comments you guys give us, and thanks for helping me out today with that elephant question on how many kilograms can an elephant's trunk lift, and that was really appreciated. So nice to sit with the buffalo. Hopefully these buffalo are going to draw those Birmingham males down to the south. They are just to the north of us, so fingers crossed that possibly on the sunset safari or later on in the night for tomorrow's sunrise safari, that those Birmingham boys come marauding down south. And as I said, a buffalo herd is almost like an ice cream truck to a kid to a male lion, so hopefully they are going to come and try follow up on these. But it has been great being with you. Andrew and I have thoroughly enjoyed it, and hopefully the weather will warm up, and that's just from my personal capacity. I don't really like being cold, and it hasn't really warmed up at all this morning. But again, thanks for joining us. It really is a privilege to be able to spend so much time with you guys and share our passion for the African bush with you. So for the last few minutes and seconds of drive, I'm going to stop gabbing and let you look at this wonderful herd of buffalo.